We will talk about Apartheid South Africa. What is Apartheid South Africa? The political system in South Africa gave privileges to the white minority and discriminated against the black population, who had fewer rights, which prevailed in South Africa and Namibia until 1992. The apartheid was a set of laws that established an unequal system and discriminate against black and Indian population in South Africa for much of the last century. Apartheid means separation in Afrikaans, a language spoken in South Africa, and it underpinned the domination of whites over blacks. This political system was promoted by the descendants of the European colonists who wanted to maintain their privileges against the indigenous population. The regime was applied from 1948 to the early 1990s. Under the apartheid regime, blacks could not vote. They had to live in remote areas from whites. They were paid less than they for the same work, and if they went to school, they had to go to separate centers with a lower educational level. Apartheid. With the 1948 declaration of apartheid made by the Nationalist Party, quote, with which begins this work, increases the process of racial segregation already exists since early 20th century in South Africa. Historical background. The first two genderless arrived in Cape Town in 1652. Jean Van Riebeeck was the first Dutchman to college the distrust of local ethnic groups, landing in Cape Town and established a colonization nucleus whose crops and livestock they supply the ships passing through to Indonesia. In 1688, about 600 farmers were installed in the place, dividing their activities between agriculture and the war against local threats. Being such a small minority, the first Dutch genderless were extremely united and aggressive, two characteristics that will mark the entire Boer culture in Southern Africa. The present process of dependent politics, it was carried out within the framework of the outbreak of the Cold War. The beginning of the decolonization and the end of the influence of traditional powers in this new bipolar war. So understood Prime Minister Malan, 1948-1954, for whom these changes in the scene international represent a problem for the maintenance of white supremacy. In 1986, the British, after a 4-year break in an administration English, returned to settle in Cape Town. Remember that Holland, after the French Revolution, became a department of the French Republic, while the Dutch East Indian Company became autonomous, asking for protection for their sea routes to Great Britain. London did not claim the indirect control of the native populations, but their indirect administration. For this reason, they preferred the agreements for exchange goods, transport native leaders into intermediaries, and combat capture of slaves. They thus quickly came into conflict with the intransigent slavery of the Boers, who, to distinguish themselves from the more recent genderless, began to call themselves same Afrikaners. After 1820, thousands of British genderless arrived in South Africa and requested that they be imposed its legislation. English became the official language in 1822, at which time enjoyed British protection, and in 1834 slavery was abolished. Without, however, these measures provoke bitter misgivings in Afrikaners, and as a result of those, the Great Trek took place, by which dozens of Afrikaners moved north and established settlers on both sides of the Orange, Wall, and Natal rivers, displacing the Nebo tribe to the banks of the Limpopo River and defeating the Zulu people before they reached settle in the area. The British soon occupied the war territory of Natal and became a British possession in 1843. This caused most Afrikaners to leave Natal and head west and north, where they found the Free State of Orange and the Republic of Transvaal. From segregation to apartheid. For the wars, the native population were simple savages who must be domesticated by force and subjected to slave labor. The ideology of superiority, white and racial discrimination were a requirement of the agrarian exploitation system that they practiced. Their agriculture was not very profitable compared to the crops of the English from El Cabo and Natal, so they need very cheap labor. The commercial and liberal mentality of the British, on the other hand, considered the slavery as an obstacle to the creation of consumer markets. Despite this concession, they did not fail to establish rigid barriers to prevent black South Africans had opportunities for economic and social advancement. Labor law from 1890 it ordered several punishments for the worker who resolved to change jobs. With the Master and Servant Act of 1843 and other subsequent decree became a crime criminal breach of the employment contract. Beginning in the 1850s, the English began hiring black workers in the territories of present-day Mozambique, Lesotho, and Botswana, as well as Indians and Chinese. These workers could not come with their families and had to return to their countries of origin if they lost their jobs. In 1894, a law was passed that forced Africans to pay in money a tax on work unless they certified to have worked outside of their housing districts for a some time. It was a procedure devised to force the natives to work for a salary much lower than that of a work of European descent. The same was arranged for the peasants an annual tax payable in money, which they could only obtain by selling their workforce to Europeans. The traditional ways of life of Africans were like this destroyed and wages could be kept low. International pressure. In the 1990s, the international community imposed economic sanctions on South Africa, which severely damaged its economy. Frederick de Klerk was the first president of that country in 1989, with the full intention of definitely canceling the separatist policies. As the war passed through the end of the Cold War and the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, the United Nations issued increasingly severe sanctions against the segregation system. The conviction against Nelson Mandela and another 120 leaders of the African National Congress declared illegal 30 years early was annulled, thus beginning the gradual abolition of this discriminatory law until 1991. Laws of Apartheid. No Africa has the right to acquire a plot of land in the whole of South Africa territory. It is forbidden for an African holder of a legal permit to reside in a city to take his wife and or children into his home. Police forces have the right to enter any home at any time of the day or night to ensure that no colored person is there. It is illegal for a white person and not white person to sit together in a tea room unless they have obtained special permission. 25 years after the state has registered her as white, anyone can be questioned about her white status by a third person. Only the Racial Classification Commission can, in case of dispute, establish the race of the person who is the object of the protest. The black politician stood out for his fight against the apartheid regime and received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993.
I'm going to tell you about was Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was a South African political activist and lawyer who dedicated his life to fighting apartheid to achieve equality in his country. Apartheid was a set of laws that discriminated against the blacks and Indians of South Africa and granted privileges to the minority of the white population for more than 15 years. Mandela, also known as Madiba in reference to his tribe, received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 for his commitment to human rights. In 1994, he would become the first black president of South Africa and would mark the end of apartheid. They were the first democratic election in which the entire South African population, black and white, could participate. His family was part of the aristocracy of the Xhosa ethnic group and was related to the tribal royal family. His origin allowed him to access a university for non-whites, something untable for the vast majority of South Africans. Went to Johannesburg, where he began to apprentice at a law firm in Johannesburg. He met members of the African National Congress, a party that boycotted the rights of blacks, and several communist activists who influenced his political ideas. In the middle of the 20th century, the black population began the protest and demand equal rights. In response, in 1948, the South African government promoted apartheid as political system, which meant legalizing racism against the majority of the non-white population. Mandela, who had joined the ANC in the early 1940s and gained weight in the organization, helped organize peaceful resistance inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. Laws that discriminated against the black population brutally and police violence against demonstrations for the rights of blacks caused Mandela to start supporting the armed resistance, an armed group that carried out attacks against pro-apartheid military and political.
That the apartheid crime ever occur. It will forever remain an accusation and a challenge to all men and women of conscience that it took as long as it has before all of us stood up to say enough is enough. The date for the demise of the white minority regime has been determined, agreed, and set. 7 months from now, on April 27, 1994, all the people of South Africa, without discriminations on ground of gender, race, color, or belief, will join in the historic act of electing a government of their choice. When distinguished leaders came together half a century ago to consign to the past a war that had pitted humanity against itself, the ruins and the smoke from the dying fires were the monument to what should not have been. The United Nations has to reassess its role, redefine its profile, and reshape its structures. It should truly reflect the diversity of our universe and ensure equity among the nations in the exercise of power within the system of international relations in general and the Security Council in particular.
It's also decorated.
Are you all right? Winter, you have become an American now, eh?
No, I just came for your visit.
Very good. The very right to be human is denied every day to hundreds of millions of people as a result of poverty and the unavailability of basic necessities such as food, jobs, water and shelter, education, health care, and a healthy environment. As I sit in Kuno, my village, and grow as ancient as its hills, I will continue to entertain the hope that there has emerged a cadre of leaders in my own country and region, on my continent, and in the world, which will not allow that any should be denied their freedom, as we were, that any should be turned into refugees, as we were, that any should be condemned to go hungry, as we were, that any should be stripped of their human dignity, as we were. Yes, well, you have made my day.
A judge found him guilty of high treason and sentenced him to life in prison. Mandela spent 27 years in prison between 1962 and 1990. In the end, negotiations between the ANC and the government and international pressure against apartheid facilitated his release in 1990. Mandela's release marked the beginning of a new policy in South Africa. All parties were legalized, including those defending racial equality. Mandela swept the 1994 election and became the first black South African president. He led the country for a single term until 1999. The South African leader died in 2013. The United Nations did not agree with the South African government's apartheid policies. There were protests in South Africa, like in Sharpeville in 1960 and in Soweto in 1976. After the Sharpeville massacre, the UN tried to remove South Africa in 1974. France, the United States, and the UK prevented that from happening. The Soweto operations started because Africans were forced to study some subject at school in Afrikaans. Many black people did not like Afrikaans because it was the language of the apartheid government and the language of their oppressors.